Construction of a new pipeline is expected to begin this summer in British Columbia, as the federal government has greenlit a $4 billion expansion of the Enbridge West Coast natural gas pipeline. Now, the expansion will add about 140 kilometers of new pipeline by constructing looping segments parallel to the existing line, running from Fort Nelson, British Columbia, down to the U.S. border. Energy Minister Tim Hodgson says this shows how the government wants to do business in the future, especially as the federal government hammers out the details of an energy agreement with Alberta.
For too long, we became accustomed to mistaking delay for seriousness. But seriousness is not measured by how long it takes to make a decision. It's measured by whether those decisions are thoughtful, credible, and made in a time frame that actually matters for the proponent.
Cory Hogan is the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Energy and Natural Resources, and he joins me now. Cory Hogan, good to see you again. Thanks for coming in today.
Good to see you too.
So this project, $4 billion in investment here, what got this one to the green light when others haven't gotten there?
Well, there's a lot of them in the pipeline, no pun intended, and I think you'll see more things happening down the road. But one of the reasons why this project was able to advance in such a positive way is because it was kind of a project done right in that Canadian way. There's 38 First Nations that are involved in it. It's going to support domestic energy security. It's going to support international energy trade. There's just a lot to like about this project, and it's a project that a lot of people can get behind. It pays for roads, schools, hospitals. There's $700 million of government revenue that results from this $4 billion project. I mean, what's not to like? And I think it really underlines the benefit of approaching these things in a pragmatic way and in a way of collaboration with the provinces and First Nations.
Right, so Enbridge is targeting 2028. For this to be like 3 million cubic feet a day, I think it adds to the pipeline. But is that viable in your estimation? I mean, what other things does your government need to do to help the pipeline company hit that target?
Well, they're gonna be commencing work like right away. One of the reasons why we wanted to make sure that we were able to give the approvals in a timely fashion as we did is because there's a season, right? There's a construction season this summer that we wanted to make sure they're able to hit. It's part of the plan to build big. And this is a big project. You know, it's going to increase the natural gas capacity in the Lower Mainland and beyond by 17%. And that also helps with things like affordability in the Lower Mainland as you start thinking about natural gas supply.
Okay, so this is a pipeline approval. It is not the pipeline approval. I'll get to that in a second. But you say there are other things that we're going to see down the road. I mean, is it more projects, and I'm not trying to say $4 billion is small by any stretch of the imagination, but is it more projects sort of in this realm and size, or what do you anticipate is the next sort of thing we'll see here?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of projects floating out there. People have talked about a number of them, potentially a pipeline to Churchill. Of course, KXL has been in the news again. We are, of course, awaiting Alberta to submit for a West Coast pipeline. And
those are all far more conceptual and longer term.
Very big, you know, and they're in varying degrees of conceptual or not. I mean, KXL is not conceptual. It's fairly concrete. And of course, there are always a number of projects going on in natural gas and in smaller pipelines that are going shorter distances. And we're making sure they're moving faster. We're making sure that we have the ability to get these projects going faster while still doing it in the way Canadians expect by respecting the environmental conditions that Canadians demand.
Just on KXL for a second, this is the Keystone XL pipeline, of course, that Obama and Biden stopped in various forms, that Trump is a proponent of, which Canada was a proponent of, no matter which government it was. But they sold off the pipe when it got killed, and there's been talk of resurrecting it because of the energy needs of the United States and the changing posture of things in the U.S. Is that close to being resuscitated in the government's view? Is this the sort of thing that we could see move to a real serious consideration in the short to medium term?
Well, look, there's going to be varying degrees on that, but I think the most important point to underline is that the kind of North American energy security it provides, particularly to Americans, is of interest to them. We want to make sure Canada has cards in any conversation with the United States. Of course, we've got to diversify our energy markets. That's why we have these conversations with Alberta and British Columbia about building a pipeline to the West Coast. But it will be part of any mix because we want to make sure that we're able to leverage it into supporting Canadian industries across the board, whether it be autos or forestry or steel or aluminum. There's a number of things that we need to discuss with the Americans, and we want to make sure that we have things that we can bring to the table and provide that kind of Canadian, leverage and context, I suppose.
But are there active talks on getting this going? Is this a real thing right now beyond sort of Oh, it's something that got mentioned in the negotiations, because we hear about it as an item on for discussion. Where is it in terms of actual traction?
Well, yeah, look, I don't think that we're going to have those conversations here on the CBC, but...
well, you're welcome to. I know. It may not be a good career move.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. But no, certainly this is not something that anybody's asleep on. We're certainly looking at this project, and we're chatting with people involved.
Okay, so where are things with the other key group you're chatting with the people involved with Alberta? Because we're past the deadline for the Memorandum of Understanding. There are some whispers of frustration on the pace and some tension points at that table. I mean, how confident are you as an Alberta member of Parliament that things are going to get done in a way that's satisfactory to both sides here?
Yeah, I'm very confident. I'd say that on the timelines that were set out, where there were a number of things we were trying to get done by April 1st, one of them we were a month ahead of schedule. That was, equivalency on impact assessment. One we were a week ahead of schedule. That was methane. And yeah, we're a little bit behind timeline on the carbon pricing, but carbon pricing is complicated. And the Premier of Alberta just this week reiterated, yes, we've all agreed to $130 effective price of carbon. And by the way, the idea that the government of Alberta and the Premier of Alberta are supporting a $130 effective price of carbon, that's just so different from where we were a year ago, 2 years ago. But everyone agrees we're on pace and that we've just got to work through those technical details. There are many ways to implement an effective price on carbon. There are many ways to transition to that price. And that's what we've got top officials in Alberta and Canada working through to make sure that we're able to do that in a way that meets all of our objectives, economic, environmental, all of them.
The Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers and other groups attached to the oil industry, they're making noise that the industrial carbon price is a competitive disadvantage for them and a real limit to them, moving ahead with their expansion goals, which is kind of the point of the MOU. So how do you calibrate the pushback from that with the willingness of Daniel Smith to engage in those conversations? Yeah,
look, we're always happy to talk to people about how we can apply things in the most pragmatic way possible, but there's a simple reality. We've got to act on climate. Acting on climate change is very important, and the three levers that we are really focused on in this government is a price on methane, a price on industrial carbon, and also making sure that we can get carbon capture and sequestration running. So that's going to be part of the formula, and not everybody's going to get everything they want all of the time. But what we will do is we'll find a common ground as much as possible, and we're happy to work with people on how those things can be best applied in a way that still reaches the climate goals that are both kind of a moral obligation, but also an expectation of Canadians.
So there's reporting this week from the Globe and Mail that on the pipeline, Daniel Smith has been key, that she wants to go north. That is her preferred route, to go to around Prince Rupert, that area. That the government may be favoring the idea of a southern route. Now, I know that TMX goes through there. Premier David Eby is more open to that idea, even open to maybe dredging part of the waterways around there to allow for bigger tankers to go in. Is that where this conversation is going? Does the government of Canada have a preferred route that it maybe going south would be a lot easier to do?
Look, we're gonna react to what the government of Alberta brings forward. They haven't brought a proposal forward yet. They're intending to do that by July 1st. That's what they said when the MOU was signed. That's what they still say. And there are a number of things they're going to have to work through. There are conversations ongoing right now with British Columbia, with First Nations, with proponents. These are all things that Alberta is shepherding through, and there's not anything for the government of Canada to react to at this moment, but we've told everybody how we're going to react. The criteria under the Build Canada Act lay out that we're going to look at the economic interest of Canada, our environmental goals, that it advances reconciliation, it works with communities, and that is how we're going to look at it, but there's nothing to look at this moment.
No, but yes, in the formal process, procedure, regulatory role, but in the broader political role in building social license and building political acceptability, avoiding conflict with First Nations, going south is a whole lot easier if you can get the port capacity to a level where you could take on the exports, right? I mean, is that not where the sentiment is right now, or is it truly agnostic on where it will go?
Well, look, we want to make sure that we're basing our decisions on data, and that data comes as part of Alberta's submission. And so you've made some assertions. Maybe they're accurate, maybe they're not. But to understand where the communities are, that's going to be part of the submission. The economics of it, that's going to be part of the submission. The technical difficulties or not of building a pipeline, that's going to be part of a submission. And those are the kinds of things that the government of Canada is going to look at. But we want to base it on a project that's real and in front of us, and that's coming before July 1st. We look forward to receiving it. But yeah, we really can't measure one against the other at this moment because there's nothing quite to measure.
Right. So right now, though, the government of Alberta is the proponent, right? And just as a final point, is there any indication to you at this point that someone beyond Danielle Smith and her government is willing to pick up this project and advance it and champion it? Because we are seeing the pushback on the $130 a ton equivalency. And we are seeing still the persistent frustration over just the uncertainty of getting to the coast. I mean, what is your sense right now of whether someone is truly ready, willing, and able to pick it up from Alberta and advance it?
Yeah, you know, I worked on basically every major pipeline project that was proposed or existed from Alberta in the past 10, 15 years in various capacities, private sector, working for the government of Alberta. So I do talk to a lot of people across the board on these matters, and there's a lot of positivity. There are certainly a lot of potential proponents in the conversation. Danielle Smith has said that. Look, I think that we're going to get there. I think there's a lot of interest and excitement about the opportunity for Canadian energy. We're, of course, going to develop things in a Canadian way, which means environmentally sensitive. We're reflecting our requirements for Indigenous reconciliation, including economic reconciliation. And we're going to make sure as well that it's done to a labor standard that Canadians expect as well. So all of those things are there. None of those things are impediments to this ultimate goal, and there is a lot of positivity out there in terms of where this project might end up.
Okay, you're waiting for the proposal by July 1. Will they have the MOU done by then? Do you think it'll be finalized by then?
You know what's funny about the MOU is there are things that actually have timelines out even
Sure.
further. There is sometimes a bit of a hyperfixation on a couple of these criteria, but the MOU is a document with timelines, but it is also a document about processes and how we're going to approach energy and how we're going to work together as Alberta and
If
as
you're going to get a
Canada.
proposal for a project, you should know the bulk of the rules, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It should be done by then?
Well, so the rules that apply to the pipeline project, yes. I think that that's a very reasonable assumption, right?
Okay.
But there are also other things in the MOU that we want to make sure we're doing. I just want to underline, one of the benefits of this is it creates durable climate action, an agreement with a conservative government, Danielle Smith's government, and the government of Canada about the necessity of long-term carbon pricing at $130 an effective ton. That is way above where it is today. It's about $20 effective price per ton right now. And so we've created, working with the government of Alberta, some of the most serious and durable climate action, well, frankly, that this country has ever seen.
Cory Hogan, Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Energy and Natural Resources. Thanks for coming in today, sir. Appreciate the time.
Always a pleasure.